Episode 10 of Season 2 of the Bad Batch is finally here, and we need to break it down, so let's get straight into it. We begin the episode with the Bad Batch trying to fix a broken down speeder. Given that their ship was stolen in the previous episode, we soon learn that the team are trying to find some transport to the next closest town. Tech points out that there's just enough energy to get them to town, and Omega realizes that they can track their ship's location by tracking Gonky the gonk droid aboard the Marauder. Meanwhile, the scavenger who stole their ship, Benni, delivers the Marauder to Mokko, the leader of the mining operation. But before Benni hands the ship over, he finds a half-eaten ration bar on the floor, likely a leftover of Wreckers, and quickly munches it down, really just giving us a clue as to how hungry and desperate the people are on this world. And when we meet the man behind the operation, what is interesting here is that Makko is a Zygerian, a species well known for its slave empire and activity in the galactic slave trade. So it's really no surprise that Makko here is using a form of indentured servitude in an attempt to stay in control. We also learned that Benni aspires to be the top earner in Makko's operation, despite Makko's obvious exploitation of the situation. Omega picks up Gronky's signal and the crew heads towards the town. The team manage to track down Gronky and find Benni. Benni initially tries to play it off, but the team aren't biting and eventually force him to guide them in infiltrating Makko's operation. As they approach Makko's operation, we learn that the entire mining operation used to be under the jurisdiction of the Techno Union. The Techno Union, which represented a few technology firms in the galaxy, was a sub-faction of the separatist movement. But the Techno Union, led by Wat Tambor during the Clone Wars, had the official stance of neutrality, although this was more of a facade than anything. The team infiltrate the base and then rappel down the chimney within 60 seconds, which does really give off a bit of a spy/Mission Impossible vibe. The team find their ship and realize that they need to put it back together, and Omega points out that they will need to lower the ray shield if they want to fly out of here. The team split up and we then see Makko gorging on a massive feast all by himself, and Makko's purpose here is really to be less of a character and more of a caricature of greed and evil. The entire scene of him feasting in such a hurried manner despite the abundance of food around him really goes a long way in highlighting this point. Benni and Omega make their way to the control room, but on their way, Benni takes a detour to the mass hall in order to secure an access card. We then meet Drake, who Benni is competing against to be the highest earner. Benni manages to swipe the card and Makko enters the mess hall to announce the results. Makko goes on a false grandiose speech about tough times and the sacrifices that he has had to make, but all of it is really just to paint himself in a better light and to gaslight the people that work for him. Drake is then declared the winner and is then given a bowl of food all to himself while the rest fight over one bowl. It soon becomes clear that despite the abundance of food available, Makko uses food and water to control the miners and the people who work for him, using it both as an incentive and as a threat enabled by his monopolistic control over the supply. Benni and Omega make their way to the control room and Benni vents that he can't believe he is still not the top earner despite stealing the ship. The two reach the control room and Omega begins to look for the codes to deactivate the ray shield, all the while Benni secretly tips off Makko about the intrusion. Omega questions Benni as to why he continues to stick around and work for Makko given his terrible treatment of the workers, but Benni pushes back, insisting that Makko is still looking out for them. Omega offers him her rations, and this little bit of kindness goes a long way. Central to the theme of the episode is the idea that victims of exploitation don't always realize that they are victims. For guys like Benni and Drake, life under Makko is likely all they really know. For them, the way in which Makko distributes rations and the way in which he treats them is a part of life. The complete absence of any desire to change the status quo reflects the idea that people living under an institutionally unfair and unjust society aren't always aware of the other possibilities or how things could be better, sort of like the frog in the well situation. There is a certain sense of complacency and acceptance to what is around them, likely developed through a sense of survival. After all, if you can't change the environment around you, you have no choice but to adapt. But that being said, by Omega offering to share her rations with Benni, it actually shakes his view on the world. This one small act of kindness goes a long way in revealing to Benni that things don't always have to be the same as it is under Makko. And Benni's initial confusion as to why Omega would even give him such a precious resource further proves the point that not only has he gotten so used to living under Makko's exploitation, but that sometimes a small act of kindness can change the world. Back at the hangar, the rest of the team fixes the ship, and Tech points out that Makko seems to be using his power as leverage over his workers, a similar tactic to the Empire. As they fix their ship, the team gets spotted by a few of Makko's men, and they then decide to chase after them before they can sound the alarm. As Omega delves further into the data, she finds that Makko has been lying about the success and productivity of the mining operation, a revelation that surprises Benni. But before anything can happen, Makko arrives and praises Benni for his good work. As Omega is apprehended, a standoff occurs between the team and Makko, and all seems rather lost for the Bad Batch. But Benni then decides to expose Makko for his lies, and this sudden revelation changes the odds as the miners turn against Makko, eventually causing him to fall to his death. And there are definitely some strong political undertones in this scene that highlight the importance of workers' rights and the tyranny of unfair working conditions. Benni thanks Omega for telling him the truth about Makko's exploitation, and Omega comes to the conclusion that the Empire aren't the only threat out there in the galaxy. Tech agrees with her but also points out that the galaxy isn't short on good people who are willing to help out either. And this small character moment here might be the first step for Omega and the rest of the team in their resolution to stand up against oppressors, whoever they may be. Given that the team has largely been apprehensive about causing any more trouble, the events that have taken place here might have started to shift their perspective, especially in the case of Omega. Anyways, that's all for this video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. I am the Lost Acolyte,
and I have spoken.